Welcome back. You've joined the deep dive for the latest DRS zone. We're swapping the starting grid for the post-race grades today.
That's right.
And we are diving headfirst into the Mexican Grand Prix, high altitude, high stakes, and honestly some pretty high drama.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
It was quite the race. If you look at our detailed notes, the overall grade comes out at a solid 7.8, I'd say.
okay, 7.8, pretty good.
Yeah, good, not truly great maybe.
Yeah.
And the reason it wasn't higher, like Mexico often is, was that familiar story this season.
Yeah,
One car just walking away with the win.
right. The fight for P1 was missing.
Exactly. But the battles for second, third, fourth, absolutely phenomenal stuff. And critically, this race wasn't just about the show. It felt like a really significant, maybe even brutal moment in the championship fight.
Okay, so let's get into it. Our mission today, using these deep dive sources, is to sort out who really delivered the stars, who just sort of got through it, the survivors, and, well, who really struggled under that pressure. We've got top marks, 9s for a couple of drivers, including one performance in a Haas that was just unbelievable. And we definitely need to talk about a championship contender whose recent form is starting to look, frankly, a bit terrifying.
Yeah, some big strategic calls, big swings in fortune. Where should we start? The top.
Let's start right at the top. Grade 9, Lando Norris. Pole position, wins by half a minute. Just pure dominance, wasn't it?
It really was a masterclass in execution.
So why a 9 and not a perfect 10, if it was that dominant?
Well, the grade reflects how he did it versus the sheer difficulty, maybe. The McLaren was clearly the class of the field. But the 9 is for the flawless execution.
Okay.
What stood out wasn't just the margin, but how he built it. That start was crucial, getting to the inside, controlling things from turn 2. He basically forced his rivals, especially Leclerc, maybe Verstappen too, into managing their tires much earlier than they wanted.
So he dictated their race early on.
Exactly. He created that gap by making them work their rubber harder earlier. It was calculated. And the result, a huge championship blow delivered. He was basically telling everyone else, focus on Interlagos, this one's mine.
Just ruthless efficiency. Brilliant stuff. But, okay, the story of the weekend, the driver everyone's buzzing about, Oliver Behrman, also gets a 9.
Yep, fully deserved. Star of the Grand Prix, no question.
P9 on the grid to P4 at the flag in a Haas. I mean, that's almost unbelievable.
You really can't overstate it. It wasn't just luck. The racecraft was immense. Gained 3 spots right off the line.
Which is impressive enough in the midfield scrum.
Right. But then lap 6, that multi-car tangle, the chaos at turn 4, he just sliced through it, jumped up to P4 ahead of Verstappen at that point.
Incredible awareness.
And he even held P3 for a bit during the pit stops. You just needed to look at the Haas pit wall, the sheer joy, the disbelief almost. It was pace, seizing the moment, and just, raw talent shining through.
Yeah, confirms all the hype, doesn't it? Amazing drive. Okay, let's move to the drivers who maybe didn't have the highs of Norris or Behrman, but managed difficult situations really well. Damage control masters.
Right, and that brings us to Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, both scoring 8s.
Okay, Verstappen in 8. He finished P3 from P5. Got caught in that early mess. But that last stint was incredible. Shouldn't that recovery, minimizing the points loss, maybe push him towards a 9?
It's a fair point, and you could argue it. The reason it probably settles at an 8 in our notes is that he was quite involved in that early chaos, dropping behind Behrman for a bit.
True, it wasn't a clean start for him.
But the 8 absolutely credits that recovery, especially the strategic call, staying out, making those softs work for that magical last stint, as the notes call it. That looked like a bit of a gamble initially.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that was the right call at the time.
Me neither. But he unlocked pace nobody else had right at the end, rocketed up to P3, almost caught Leclerc. It just shows his ability to salvage points even when things aren't going perfectly. You played his hand really well.
Okay, fair enough. And Leclerc. P2 start, P2 finish. Sounds straightforward, but was it?
It was challenging in a different way. Less about fighting, more about pressure and risk management. That start, going 4 wide almost.
Yeah, that was hairy.
He did brilliantly to hold his position there without getting tangled up. After that, yeah, maybe a bit of a solitary race for large parts, but those final laps were absolutely vital. Holding off Verstappen on those flying softs, that required perfect management.
Keeping him just out of DRS range.
Exactly. He delivered what Ferrari needed, a solid, disciplined drive under pressure. An 8 feels right.
All right, let's shift focus down the order a bit. Midfield movers, some key points scored there. Got to shout out Gabby Bortoleto and Esteban Ocon.
Yeah, definitely. Bortoleto, an 8 for him. A proper comeback drive, wasn't it? Started P16.
And finished P10. grab that last point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
6 places gained. Crucial overtakes on Saints and Hijjar 2. That's a really strong performance in that pack. And Ocon, a solid 7. P11 to P9. A couple of important points for Haas. Just a generally fantastic weekend for that team, really.
It really was. Okay, and if you're just joining us or watching this on YouTube, welcome to DRS Zone. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more F1 deep dives like this one. We're getting into the really juicy stuff now, including the dynamics at Mercedes.
Ah, yes, the Silver Arrows. Intrigue there. Kimi Antonelli versus George Russell.
Antonelli comes out on top here, right? P6 finish, gets an 8. Russell P7 gets a 7.
That's how the grades fell, yeah. Antonelli beat his teammate, which is always significant. And apparently he was quite forceful on the radio. The notes call him picaro, cheeky, assertive maybe, demanding Russell let him back through late on.
Ooh, spicy. Laying down a marker.
Definitely. Now, he benefited a lot from that turn 4 chaos like Behrman did, jumping up the order. But the bigger picture here is that internal fight, isn't it? For Toto Wolff, the question is consistency from Antonelli, given what's potentially on the line, that second seat.
Absolutely. And for Russell, that 7 feels, well, maybe a bit generous even. Started P4, finished P7, dropped places at the start, lost out to Verstappen, Piastri later on.
And then had to yield to his teammate.
Exactly. On team orders. Doesn't that just scream underperformance when the car was clearly capable of more?
It does point that way, yeah. The 7 acknowledges the pace was probably there in the car, but the execution, especially at key moments like the start and managing the stints, wasn't quite there.
Losing those positions early really hurt him.
And then being asked to move aside for the rookie teammate, especially one who's potentially after your job long term. That makes a P7 finish feel much worse than just the number suggests.
Yeah.
Definitely failed to maximize the potential on the day.
Right. Okay, now for the less rosy picture. The disappointments, the strategic stumbles. And we have to start with the biggest headline here, don't we? Oscar Piastri. A grade of 5.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, the notes call this an historic, dramatic drop. That feels strong, but looking at the context.
It is shocking. And it feels so out of character compared to the Piastri we saw dominating earlier in the season, doesn't it? Let's just look at the trend. The numbers are stark. After Zandvoort, he led the championship by 34 points.
I remember that. It seemed like he had it under control.
And now, over the last 5 races, he's lost 35 points to Norris. That's a 70-point swing since the summer break.
Yeah.
Well, it's a collapse.
70 points. That's staggering.
So yeah, he finished P5 after starting P7, passed Tsunoda, gained from penalties, technically damage limitation on the day. But you can't ignore the trend. It feels less like bad luck now and more like, well, the pressure getting to him significantly. A5 reflects that bigger picture, I think.
Yeah, you have to wonder what's going on there psychologically. Okay, who else struggled? Weekends ruined by bad luck or bad calls?
Well, Carlos Sainz. No grade, really. Just pure frustration. Had a decent qualifying P7.
But it all went wrong at turn 1, didn't it?
Completely undone. Got damage. Apparently a tire sensor broke, which then messed up his speed limiter.
Ah, hence the penalties.
Exactly. A 5-second penalty, then a drive-through because the limiter wasn't working. Just killed his race, his strategy, everything. Ended up P15, just one of those weekends for him and Ferrari.
Ouch. And Lewis Hamilton started P3, finished P8, gets a 6. A podium chance just evaporated.
Yeah, a really tough outing for him. Got caught in that messy 4-wide situation at the start, lost ground.
And then the penalty later on.
Right, the 10-second penalty for gaining an advantage off track during that scrap involving Verstappen. That meant he had to push like crazy to build a gap to Behrman behind him.
To negate the penalty time.
Yeah, needed about 4 seconds, but Behrman's pace in the Haas was just too strong, too consistent.
Right.
Hamilton couldn't pull it out, dropped to P8. And, you know, the notes mentioned that's 20 races now without a podium for him. That's got to sting.
20 races. Wow, okay, finally, let's touch on the teams that just seemed off the pace all weekend. Alpine and Aston Martin mainly.
Yeah, struggles for both. Alpine, Colapinto, and Gasly both get 5s. The car just wasn't there.
Colapinto tried that super long hard tire stint.
Yeah, 51 laps. It just never worked. The tire wouldn't switch on. He was nowhere near the points. And Gasly, maybe even more worrying, he just seemed to have zero rhythm in the first stint, fell back rapidly, looked like massive tire issues. Just not competitive.
And Aston Martin. Alonso and Stroll both get 6s. Slightly better, but still not great.
Alonso's race was over pretty quick, wasn't it? Brake problems forced him to retire early.
Right.
And Stroll, he had a spin after a tangle with Colapinto, ended up P15. Just seemed like both Astons were struggling with balance and setup all weekend. Couldn't really capitalize on anything.
So a weekend of clear winners and some really significant losers then. Okay, let's wrap this up. The big takeaway from Mexico, the headline has to be Lando Norris extending that championship lead, right? A massive statement.
Absolutely. And the final math confirms it. Norris now leads Verstappen by 36 points. Interesting, though, Max was 40 points behind coming into the weekend.
Ah, so he did claw back a tiny bit, despite everything.
Just slightly. Shows that damage limitation worked to an extent. And you see the volatility reflected in the power rankings, too. You know, the metric trying to isolate pure driver performance. Verstappen's still P1 overall there.
Okay.
But Norris climbs up to P3, tied with Russell now. And Piastri, he's dropped dramatically to P5 in those rankings, tied with Alonso. That really highlights the recent inconsistency we were talking about, a huge shift from where he was pre-summer break.
Right. Really interesting shifts there. So here's the final thought, the big question for you listening. Norris is up 36 points. Only 4 races left. We've just talked about all this drama, Bierman bursting through, Piastri's shocking slump, Verstappen's knack for saving points even on an off day. So what's the biggest threat to Lando now? Is it still the raw, undeniable pace Verstappen can unleash when that Red Bull is hooked up? Or is it actually the internal pressure, the mental game of protecting that big lead, knowing one slip-up could change everything in these final races?
That's a great question to ponder. History tells us that leading from the front, managing that pressure, sometimes that's the hardest part. Definitely something we'll be watching closely.
Me too. All right, that brings us to the end of this deep dive on the Mexican Grand Prix. If you enjoyed digging into the grades and the strategy with us, please make sure you subscribe and follow DRS Zone wherever you get your audio fix.
Thanks for tuning in.
We'll catch you next time for more F1 analysis.